I'm Neifileana Vega Ortiz, and today we're going to reconceptualize and recontextualize evaluating, assessing, and testing in language education. To do so, it is important to set a clear objective, but that purpose could not be possible if we do not check some background information regarding competences. In the same way, we will analyze what parents, students, and teachers think about these three main concepts of evaluation, assessment, and testing, so that we can arrive to practical conclusions that let us identify the difference that exists among these three main topics. Our main objective today will be to demonstrate the importance of critically reflecting on the understanding of evaluation, assessment, and testing, and developing assessment practices responsive to the diverse needs and context of language learners and teachers. To understand those three main concepts, it is important that we go back a little. The Common European Framework of References consider two main competences in order to carry out the tasks and the activities required to deal with communicative situations. Users and learners draw upon a number of competences developed in the course of their previous experiences. The general competences are those ones that, in fact, focus on the to know how to be, to know how to do, and to know how to learn. While the communicative competences are those ones, according to the Common European Framework of Reference, that are not considered just one ability, but a set of abilities to be, to know, to do, and to learn in context. But before having clear what is the meaning of all those three concepts, let's give it a look to what parents, students, and teachers who are daily involved in these communicative processes might think about these three main concepts. Three different people were interviewed. Parents, for instance, represented by Sylvia, tend to think that evaluation is the process when you are going to review something specifically and give a grade or a score to that procedure. In the same way, she considers assessment as a way to make several evaluations, reviewing processes, and giving a final diagnosis. And the concept of testing varies a lot. For most of parents, testing means to try something or to define if that something works, it's useful, or is not. The group of students was represented by Juliana. When she was asked about evaluation, she considered it as an umbrella term, something very general. When talking about assessment, she defined it as the act of evaluating someone, and that could be either formative or summative. While testing, it's applying different instruments in order to check results on courses and can be either formal or informal. But we might think that teachers know for sure the meaning and the difference among these three concepts. However, there is a lot for teachers to learn. In general terms, teachers consider evaluation as the use of gathered data to see what the students know, how they know it, and what for, so that teachers can improve subsequent classes. Assessment for teachers are qualitative analysis of what's going on in the classroom and among the students. While testing, it's an instrument that might help teachers to identify and grade the outcomes of different classes. So let's start by analyzing what evaluation actually is. The Colombian government established that we should evaluate students in the context according to the Decree 1290. We have to assess the proficiency, even though proficiency is a type of assessment rather than an evaluation. When we talk about evaluation, we have to consider policies, instructions given by entities or important states. The Ministry of Education or public policies or private or official institutions are the ones that define the methods and how evaluation should be applied. But when talking about assessment, we need to know that even though the Common European Framework of Reference has shown approximately 26 types, different studies and research have shown that there are more than 40. Our professor Juan Diego Martinez Marin states, if you know the concept, you can manipulate it. This means that we as teachers need to know for sure the meaning of different things so that it could be explained easily to students. Assessment can be different types. We can have either formative or summative assessment, direct or indirect ways, objective versus subjective, and so on. We assess because evaluation is guiding us to do it. We also assess depending on methods or approaches. We always need to consider didactics, pedagogical approach, mission, and vision from the institution where we are working on. But before testing and actually considering all the assessment process, it is important that we figure out the real purpose of assessment. Assessment has 4 different purposes: for learning, of learning, as learning, and in learning. For learning, it's tending to be formative, and it is the purpose in which the main goal is to learn. Of learning, on the other side, tends to be summative, and it's precisely the one that measures a student's knowledge. The us learning purpose is not actually part of the approach as it used to be before. Now the approaches are the ones which are part of assessment. And finally, the in-learning, which implies the moment since the public policy was created until it is finally applied inside the classroom. So, now that we have a little bit clear the difference between evaluation and assessment, let's talk about testing. Testing couldn't be possible without considering these principles. Construct validity, for instance, makes that the criteria and the concept taught work together inside the same rubric. Validity, on the other side, is what makes a document valid. We find out that that text must follow some specific requirements regarding the institution where it is applied. The text needs to have the same structure, the same goal, the same objective, and the exercises should be doable by students. Our third principle is reliability. The principle of reliability refers to the consistency and stability of an assessment. When we're talking about a reliable assessment, we expect that it produces consistent results over time. Never mind if the test takers are changed or there are different versions created along the test. But these principles couldn't be enough if teachers are not practical. And in order to explain practicality, let me consider one very clear example given by our teacher Juan Diego in class. Teachers or second language teachers tend to evaluate or test their students considering specific aspects. Most of the rubrics begin with a listening section, continues with a vocabulary exercise, probably some reading comprehension text, and a written production. But if the written production needs vocabulary in order to be accomplished, then why should we add an extra exercise for vocabulary that can be checked, scored at the end in a same written production? Another important thing will be the impact that an assessment might have either on teaching as on learning. An assessment that has a positive impact can motivate learners to engage meaningful learner activities. And this is basically what we know as washback. In the same way, testing should be authentic. Authenticity is not precisely for education, but for real context. It's very different to ask a student to write a poem rather than to make that student write a letter to his mom asking for a permission. When we consider those real life situations, teaching is easier and generates a better impact in students. And to finish, testing should consider democracy. That means that students must participate in the design and the creation of different instruments to be evaluated, as well as being fair and apply justice. Here in Colombia and also different countries worldwide, education hasn't been equitative. If we are going to measure students, the idea is to measure them in the same way, considering the same criteria. However, testing is not always fair because students do not arrive to the testing day having the same circumstances around. Some of them might come a little bit well prepared or even more prepared than others simply because they have the capacity, they have the skills, and they have the money to assume a better education. To sum up, and as a conclusion, we might say that overall, reconceptualizing and recontextualizing evaluation, assessment, and testing in language education is a very important process that can lead to more effective and equitable language teaching and learning practices. By consider alternative assessment models and taking into account diverse needs and backgrounds of language learners, language educators can create more inclusive and effective language learning environments that definitely promote communicative competence in the same way as cultural awareness. So, thank you so much for being attentive, for listening, and for paying attention to this entire speech. I look forward to your comments, suggestions, and feedback.